Hello, everyone. My name is Liliana Quesada Serpa. The Young Adult Library Services Association, YALSA, developed guidelines to assess how well a library meets the needs of teens. And these guidelines were utilized to observe and evaluate the dedicated teen space at the Point Loma Harvey Library. This library is part of the San Diego Public Library System, serving the Point Loma neighborhood and surrounding communities. Point Loma's history is rooted in fishing, influencing the library's marine life theme. The library features a sign labeled Teens and Children, indicating that these dedicated spaces are located on the first floor. The children's area was really easy to recognize, featuring traditional elements like a storytime space, an activities area with small tables and chairs for games, and a wooden sailboard in the center that functions as a cozy reading nook. On the other hand, the dedicated teen space was difficult to locate, even after having visited the library several times. In real world teen services, Velasquez indicated that the allotment of a space in public buildings clearly illustrates which groups matter and which groups don't. The library assistant that worked at the children's desk was approached to ask about the dedicated teen space, and she pointed out the area that currently serves as a dedicated teen space. This space consists of a Youth Services Librarian YSL desk. However, no dedicated staff was assigned to the desk. Velasquez highlights that a library doesn't truly have a teen space if it does not have a teen services librarian, because they activate the space by encouraging teens to participate and become engaged. The library assistant at the children's desk stated that ideally there should be an additional library assistant assigned to the YSL desk. However, for the past few months, she has been the only one managing the entire first floor. The YSL desk had supplies, puzzles, board games, toys, flyers for homework help, etc. The dedicated teen space had three rectangular wooden metal tables with four metal chairs each. These tables had power outlets in the middle to charge computers, tablets, cell phones, which aligns with the Teen Space guidelines to include ample outlets to allow for technology owned by the library as well as technology owned and brought into the space by teens. These tables had a set of two plastic mats per table, which can serve as protection when teens do art projects. The weight of each table appeared to be heavy. They could not be lifted, moved around to arrange them differently, or to put them together because the tables seemed to be fixed to the floor. As Bernier points out, a space manifests power, and even though a dedicated team space isn't about tables or chairs, intention and usefulness are key components. Fixed tables limit the flexibility of the space, and teens with mobility challenges or those who require wheelchair access may find it more challenging to accommodate. The teen space guidelines indicate that the space should be easy to navigate for teens with wheelchairs, walkers, and other assist- assistive devices. In addition, having fixed tables limits how teens can control the environment, which might discourage teens from taking ownership of the space. In transforming young adult services, Mike Meus emphasizes that teens tend, not universally, but as a general rule, to cram closer together than adults do, even in the most routine circumstances. However, existing dedicated spaces like the Point Loma Harvey Library does not seem to consider these unique needs of teens. One of the tables had a tent that reads, "This area is reserved for kids and teens during after school hours." These table tents are an excellent tool for notifying adults and parents that the area is designated for teens during specific hours. However, teen services staff also need to give verbal warnings to adult patrons. Nonetheless, creating this after school space should not be an opportunity to segregate teens. Bernier referred to this as after school apartheid, which examines how teens are viewed as a distinct other and segregated from the public. The dedicated teen space also had 7 armchairs that seemed comfortable, and even though they were heavy, they were not attached to the floor, making it easy to move them around the space. All the armchairs were the same size, could not be adjusted up or down, the backrest could not be moved to the front or the back, and they had rigid arm rest. Those characteristics do not align with the team space guidelines, which suggest that comfortable seating should be provided for teams of various sizes and abilities. The dedicated team space is themed with marine life and boats, reflected in its decor and the furniture. Having a flexible, neutral space should have been the goal when creating this dedicated team space, and teens' feedback on the design of the space should have been requested, as suggested in the Teen Space Guidelines. However, it is unclear if this happened when choosing the theme for the Point Loma Harvey Library. The dedicated teen space had 3 surfboard tables and a set of 2 metal chairs on each table. Although the surfboard tables had a fun and teen friendly look, they were rigid, fixed to the floor, and did not move up or down. The same observation was made for the metal chairs. They were rigid, all the same size, could not be adjusted up or down, the backrest could not be moved front or back, they were uncomfortable, and not ideal to be sitting on for long periods of time. In the middle of the surfboard tables, there is a functioning submarine periscope that gives visitors on the first floors a bird's eye view from the roof. The periscope featured a sign stating that it was an antique donated from a U.S. Navy submarine used between 1960 and 1990, with a warning sign against spinning it. The dedicated area for teens included a computer lab and a music room, each with signs on their doors indicating a space is currently unavailable. Due to the glass doors, both rooms were fully covered with paper or plastic to prevent visibility inside. When the library assistant was approached to inquire about this, she explained that both rooms were under construction. In addition, there were 3 meeting rooms labeled as seminars with a sign posted on the door, indicating that you must sign in at the YSL desk to use these rooms. One of the rooms had a sign that indicated "Sorry, temporarily closed." Also, there was an AV multimedia room situated on the first floor. The first floor should be a dedicated space for teens and children. However, the AV multimedia room was also accessible and used by adult patrons. Teens will likely avoid a dedicated teen space filled with adults because they do not want to engage in risky adult initiated interactions. Library staff may interpret this avoidance behavior as an indicator that teens do not desire or require a dedicated library space. Finally, the teen space guidelines recommend creative signs to clearly indicate that the space is intended for teens. And two signs were located within the dedicated teen space. However, they lacked creativity, and the words teen space were barely legible. The policy regarding unattended children and the rules of conduct for library patrons were displayed on the wall of the first floor. According to the library assistant, these conduct rules apply equally to adult patrons and teens. And no teens were seen in the dedicated teen space during the visit to the Point Loma Harvey Library for this evaluation. And the library assistant explained that despite the presence of nearby high schools, the library has not successfully engaged with the teen community, resulting in rare visits to the dedicated teen space. Additionally, the library assistant noted that teens who visit after school often arrive in a high energy manner, engaging in playful and noisy behavior. When asked to lower their volume, they typically choose to leave instead. In transforming young adult services, Nancy Lesko highlights that teens are constantly engaged in social activities. Hence, they should have opportunities to engage in behaviors developmentally appropriate. Bernier's concept of the geography of know explores how libraries design spaces that force teens into behaviors and environments that directly contradict how young people actually work and use space. According to the Teen Space Guidelines, libraries are advised to consider a teen only policy. This approach allows teens to feel ownership and behave in ways typical for their development. However, the Point Loma Harvey Library does not enforce a teen only policy, and library staff has behavior expectations of teens being quiet despite the after hour period typically being not quiet. This concludes the observation evaluation of the dedicated teen space at the Point Loma Harvey Library. Thank you, everyone.